there's so much value people have, whether they're young or old. Everybody has something to give and value just because of the fact that they're human. Yeah. That is it. You're human. You have value. You matter.
Right,
you matter to God. He's your creator. You matter to God. You matter to your loved ones. Don't just write people off. Yeah.
Hi. Welcome back to our channel. We're here to talk about something that's a follow-on from our last video. So if you joined us and you watched that, then great. If you didn't, then go back and watch the one before this, and we will link it as well. So in the last video, we talked about vision, dreams, and goals, and how to trust God in the timing of those coming to fruition and manifesting. And we also touched on the fact that, you know, despite your age or your stage of life, God has a purpose for you. And it doesn't matter if you're old or young. It might seem like it's not happening at the time that you thought it would. But either way, there's still a plan. And Alison shared some brilliant examples of people who have gone on to do things later on in life. And one thing we want to really highlight about our ministry is that we don't just support life from the womb. We support life from the womb to the tomb. And one of the things that we have on our social media is like a slogan, and it says, "From beginning to end, we defend." So I just want to share a scripture that kind of opens up that about how we feel about what the word says about life. Because, you know, it's important to just really state that point, because some people think we're just talking about, you know, the womb and babies and protecting them. But no, we value life from beginning to end. So Proverbs 31:8 verse 9 says, "Open your mouth for the speechless, in the cause of all who are appointed to die. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and the needy." So yeah, we're here to open up our mouth for the people who have no voice, who are vulnerable, and who need people to advocate for them, and that are at risk of death, whether it's in the womb or whether it's through another means of assisted dying or any other form of premature death that God didn't ordain for them. So yeah, that's just really what we want to highlight. You know, whether you're needy or vulnerable, there are people out there who want to speak up for you. So Alison's just going to share a little bit about what's been going on in the world in regards to that.
So yes, people might think we're just talking about sensitive subjects that are very emotive, but that's not the case. It's just what we've got on our heart, and at the moment in Parliament across the UK, there is a push for people, some of the ministers, the MPs, the MSPs in Scotland, and they're trying to bring in assisted suicide. So they're starting off wanting to do debates on it and things like that, but then eventually things like that can lead to votes. And I read an article which said that with our upcoming election this year, our general election, I read an article that said Keir Starmer, who's the leader of the Labour Party, is in favour of assisted suicide. So I'm sure he's a lovely guy, and he's got lots of good ideas for the country, but I don't think that's one of them, because I think assisted suicide is a very dangerous thing that is trying to push its way into this country. It's already been pushed into others, and it's shown how dangerous it is in legalising it. And I do understand that why people want to legalise it. We both understand that, because we do know people, if somebody's terminally ill and in a heck of a lot of pain, then sometimes they want to end the pain quicker, and so they would like the option to choose assisted suicide. So I can understand that, and it must be very difficult for the family and the person involved. But there is also palliative care, which we'll mention later, and as well, it might help those people, but it would be a very dangerous thing to bring in for other older people and vulnerable people who aren't necessarily ill or dying, but they could be at risk. So if I just share some articles that I've found on the topic. So why some people choose assisted suicide. So this was an article in America. So it's not legal in all states, but this it says a major reason people chose to end their lives is the fear of becoming a burden. So back in 2020, 53.1% of people killed by assisted suicide in Oregon, that's one of the US states where it's legal, gave this reason for ending their lives. And that fear can be exploited, sadly, through undue influence, subtle pressure and coercion. And that article was from Oregon Death with Dignity Act and a data summary on 2020. So these aren't just made up facts and figures. These are real lives, real people, real fears. Other reasons, for example, revealed in another study: fears, sadness, loneliness. Vulnerable people considering assisted suicide were found to be strongly influenced by fears, sadness, and loneliness. Loneliness is a big one for people. No one wants to be lonely. Nobody wants to be alone. It's probably one of the biggest fears we have as a human race.
Because we weren't created to be on our
own. No, we were not. So yeah, that's probably a big issue. Also, negative ideas about old age. And the same study highlighted concerns about trends which increase social pressure on older people and reinforce negative ideas surrounding old age. So a lot of older people I know, especially, I'm just thinking of some of my family members, they could be very stubborn, and people of the older generation, they don't want to be a burden to their families. And so if this was an option, sadly, I think some people, and in some countries, some older people have chose this. And I'm sure their families would rather have them there, whether they're a bit of a burden or not, whether they need care in a home, or they need to, I don't know, financial things and whatever. They're still part of the family, and I'm sure the family members or the friends still love them and wouldn't want them to end their lives just because they feel like they might be a burden. But if that option was there, it would be sadly up to them. Another reason assisted suicide could be dangerous is because it has an effect. Now, most people wouldn't think this, but it does have an effect. It's been proven to have an effect on other suicides. It says, regrettably, legalising assisted suicide leads to more suicides generally. A 2015 study in the USA found that assisted suicide was linked to a 6.3% increase in total suicides and a 14.5% increase in the over 65s. Changing the law was associated with an increased inclination to suicide in others, and that was from an article made in 2015 about physician-assisted suicide. So, and I believe personally that is because obviously somebody choosing suicide for themselves is different to assisted suicide, but I believe, and I think a lot of Christians do, is that it's a spiritual element. When something like this tries to come into the nation, it's a lack of value of life in general, whether it's the unborn or whether it's old people or sick people or people that are dying or in some way. We need to value everyone from beginning to end, no matter what their issues are, what their ailments or mental health issues or anything. Everybody needs to be valued just for being simply human. Every human being has value, and these laws in these other countries that have been made don't seem to value the humanity of people, and it's so sad. But it brings that spiritual stronghold with this suicide. You increase one thing, you increase another, and it's so sad. People need help, and people need,
and sometimes it's just practical support, isn't it? It's not even.
It is. Yeah.
Some of the reasons that people have applied for this in the places that it's legal are things to do with, their natural circumstances, living arrangements, homelessness. So things that, with the right support and a community of people to come alongside them could be dealt with. And it just kind of goes back to some of the reasons why people choose to have abortions as well. It's because based on the circumstances, and they feel like they can't cope with that and they're not getting the support. So it's really just, really thinking about how can we help these people? Don't discard your life because your circumstances are not where you want them to be. What can we do to increase some hope back into your life?
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah.
And as I said at the beginning, I understand why terminally ill people in pain would want to choose assisted suicide, but there is a risk as well with if that was legalised, that the quality of palliative care would diminish, because if people are having the option to end their lives earlier, do we really need that much palliative care? But palliative care in the right way is given. It's good palliative care should reduce physical symptoms and depression and improve quality of life for however long the person has left. And the people that work in palliative care are so passionate about giving these people what they call like a good death, because they want
a death with dignity.
Yeah, they don't want them to be alone and suffering. And they can give painkillers, good painkillers that probably aren't normally allowed unless you are sadly dying. Family and friends can be around and just share as much time with that person as they can. And it does say in this article that some of the countries that have legalised it, so for example, Belgium, where it's legal, healthcare facilities reluctant to practice assisted suicide have been threatened with the loss of public funding. And that was from an article about euthanasia and assisted suicide from 2017. And in Canada, funding was withdrawn from several hospices that refused to participate in assisted suicide. And that was from a Western Standard articles, a newspaper from July 2021. So these governments, because, oh, well, we've got assisted suicide now, so we don't need to put as much money into palliative care. So they're taking the money to better palliative care, taking it away. And so these people that don't want to end their lives early are struggling. And they shouldn't have to. And it is so sad and shocking that this is what some countries are coming to. They're choosing. And life, it just really needs to be valued and treasured, because I think sometimes maybe older people might think, oh, well, I've had my time, I've lived my life, and now it's for the young, and they devalue themselves in some way. And I just think that's so sad, because everybody has something to give, to value. Everybody has value, whether they're.
And I think if we need to recognise the influence that the older generation have, the wisdom, the advice, the memories that they can share with you. I can say, if it wasn't for my grandparents, who came from like the Windrush generation, and then my granddad, then I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't have the opportunities that I have. And, that's why we have to speak up for them, especially when they come to older age and, they can't speak up for themselves, and they're dealing with challenges, and they feel like they are a burden. So it's not okay. And you've got an example of.
For example, my gran, bless her, she lived a good long life, but she did have dementia towards the end of her life, the last few years of her life. She did suffer with dementia, and anyone that has experienced dementia, whether it be a family member or a friend, how heartbreaking dementia can be, especially watching your loved ones suffer with it. A couple of my family members had it, of that generation. But that doesn't mean, we wanted them to do without. We didn't want to save them the loss of dignity, and we wouldn't have chosen assisted suicide if it was illegal, just to save them a loss of dignity. The dignity is them. The dignity is our relationship with them, and not having it stolen and snatched away. Because I was blessed to have those extra years with my gran, whether she was all focused in on on conversations we were having, or if she was calling me the wrong name. I didn't care. She was my gran, and I loved her, and she still had a character and a wittiness about her, even in the middle of a dementia, and she had what I would call a peaceful ending, because she was in a home, and it was sad that that's where she ended up. But sometimes you can't carry on looking after someone at home. It's not feasible. And but she was peaceful, and I had the privilege of spending a good few hours with her, as did my dad and my mum and my brother. We spent a good few hours with her in a final day on this earth, and I'm so thankful for that, because I just think, choosing assisted suicide would have ended a life so much earlier. We would have missed out on special times with my gran. And yeah,
and it's the same for me, really. Like, unfortunately, all my grandparents have passed on now. But I really value the time that I got to spend with them, especially during the times when they were unwell and, you know, they needed a lot of care and assistance. And I got to sit with them and glean from them and, you know, just really just find out more about who they are. And some of them were a bit more open about their journey and their, you know, things that they had to deal with, even just in their formative years. And that was such a blessing to me and something that I will treasure, because, you know, if I had just thought, oh, well, you know, they're old, and, you know, when you're younger, you don't really want to spend time with your family as much, but I really value that time. And my step-granddad as well, he had an illness towards the end of his life, but God graced him to give him more time. And even when he had that disease, he kind of gave up, and he was like, oh, I'm just going to accept that. If I won't even ask them to resuscitate me if you know, anything was to happen. But then, you know, he did survive that, and he did come home, and he had a couple more years of life after that. And he began to share his gift in terms of writing poems. And, you know, I was really like encouraged by his words. And I was like, you know, don't feel like you've not got nothing to offer people, because his wisdom, the wisdom that he gives me is priceless. And the wisdom that a lot of my other grandparents have given me is priceless. And it's something that, you know, will help me later on in life and in different seasons. So we just want to encourage everyone to just, you know, see the benefits in that. And even just in the work and the things that I'm doing at the moment, I'm working with people that are a lot older than me, some of them. And I'm learning so much from them. And I don't think I would have really understood the value of what younger people and older people can offer in that kind of environment.
Yeah, the younger generation can learn so much from the older generation.
Don't discount them. You know, get to know them, spend time with them, ask questions. You know, there's things they can teach you that you're not going to learn off the internet. Google ain't going to tell you everything. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, and especially if you, for example, one thing I really regret not asking more about when all my grandparents were alive was my family, because a lot of people get interested into family trees and genealogy, learning about your family history. And I did, but I got interested in it after they'd all passed away. So I'm getting second and third hand stories. And so I managed to do some, but I just wish I would have asked so much more. I did ask some, but I could have asked so much more. And so if you still have the honour of having your grandparents or older generation in your family, ask them questions or learn skills from them, make them feel
baking, cooking,
valuable
recipes.
Exactly,
to keep that tradition on.
I mean, some skills, some especially craft skills can go become extinct because they're an older time craft, and with technology people don't use certain things the same way, but older people have all these skills and know what to do, and they could teach people and carry on that skill or a legacy of something. There's so much value people have, whether they're young or old. Everybody has something to give and value just because of the fact that they're human. That is it. You're human. You have value. You matter. You matter to God. He's your creator. You matter to God. You matter to your loved ones. Don't just write people off. Yeah.
Well said. So just to end, I've got a quote. It says I don't know where I got it from, so just don't asked me to reference it. But anyway, every image bearer of God, the embryo as well as the 100-year-old, is dearly loved by God. So yeah, just end with that and just let that sink in. And yeah, just think about some of the things we've shared, because it's important. Life is important. It's important to value it. It's important to cherish the moments you have with your loved ones. And it's important to speak up for those who can't speak up for themselves. So we want to thank you for tuning in today, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.